Welcome to episode 6 of Sharks Talk 916. It's a special episode. We're breaking in midweek if you're live with us. So we can talk about the first round of the playoffs, which, as we all know, is very boring. Nothing really to talk about. I am Chad Thurston. With me is Nolan Torrey, the brains of the operation. Sharks Talk 916 is brought to you by Sports Talk 916. Check us out on Twitter at Sharks Talk 916 or Facebook is Sports Talk 916 Network, and on the website or the internets, you can go to sportstalk916.com. So let's just jump in. So I don't know, you notice I may have a little bit of a raspy voice right now.
Yeah.
I spent Tuesday night pacing around my living room and yelling at my television screen.
Yeah, you should have heard me yesterday. I can barely talk. Still not much better today, but we're getting there. So
a pretty epic first round, honestly, not just for the Sharks, but we're going to focus on the Sharks at the beginning, but an epic first round of NHL playoffs in general. In my opinion, it really says a lot about the NHL as a whole, the way that the first round of playoffs ended up. So let's jump right into, let's do the last thing first, I guess. So everyone will want to has been talking about this, tweeting, blogging, everything. So Game 7, Sharks are down
3-0. 10 minutes to go.
10 minutes to go, and
face off in the offensive zone.
Yep.
Cody Eakin versus Pavelski, and off the draw, Eakin sort of cross-checks him in the chest, right? And I wouldn't even, it was more like a gentle shove than a cross-check. Pavelski falling towards the ice, and Stastny, some people would say he pushed him down the ice, shoved him down the ice. Some people say it was incidental contact. Regardless, Pavelski's head smashes down the ice. He's knocked out cold, motionless, bleeding out of his helmet. I don't know if it was from his skull or his ears or if he was just cut. But a scary scene. And then I'll let you take away the rest of what happened after that.
Yeah, so, Pabs has blood coming out of the vent of his helmet, which I've never seen in hockey. I've worn a hockey helmet. I've even fallen and busted my head open. I've never seen blood pour out of the back of a hockey helmet. He gets carted off the ice, helped by a pack of Sharks, including Joe Thornton, of course. Jumbo comes back, and according to Couture, says, well, now you know what you got to do now. You got to go and score 3 goals. And as Couture said, so of course, when somebody who's been playing for 20 years tells you that, what do? You go and score 4 goals. Sharks score 4 goals in 4 minutes. The penalty was a major. So if they get 5 minutes of power play time, they can score as many goals as they want. Couture starts them off with a goal, 17 seconds or something into the power play, right off the beginning of the power play. And in what's, the most exciting hockey I've ever seen, the Sharks score 4 goals in 4 minutes. Kevin Labanc has 3 assists and a goal in that period of time, which is just insane. And the Sharks pull ahead by 1. 47 seconds left in the game. Unfortunately, they give up a goal and let Vegas tie it up, and it goes to overtime. And probably the last person you would have picked playing that night to score the game winner. Goodrow managed to slide 1 past Fleury, and Sharks win it. And just, the crowd on the television was insane. But my wife and I are jumping up and down, screaming in the living room when that goal goes in. We didn't sit down from the point that Pavs took the hit until the game was over. We didn't sit down. We stood up the entire time.
Of course, I didn't watch overtime. I couldn't bring myself to do it after. Well, first of all, when Pavelski gets hurt, I was sick to my stomach. It's been a long time since I've seen an injury that scary. Just, you don't like seeing guys motionless, especially bleeding from their head. Obviously concussion bare minimum, but God knows you can have a bruised brain at that point. So that was a scary injury for me, and considering I thought the game was long over at that point, that sort of I didn't give a fuck about the game at that point. I just wanted Pavelski to be okay, and then they score the first goal, and I'm like, okay, cool, good job, guys. And then they get the second goal, and then I'm like, all right, okay, I'm back to the game now.
And I think the first thing, in case for some reason you don't know about, you're listening to this podcast and you don't know, Pavelski is okay. He doesn't have the skull fracture, at least that much we know. Nolan and I both are guessing because it's very cryptic what comes out from the Sharks organization, but probably a concussion. I'm assuming there's some stitches somewhere. Hopefully he's back in a couple games. But like I saw the tweet from Brody the other day, and my response was, "Hey, I'm not even worried about when he comes back to play hockey. Yesterday, I was just worried about, is Pavelski okay?"
Yeah.
And luckily he is. It sounds like he's at least nothing permanent that's going to keep him from being able to play again someday.
Well, my worry is that he comes back too quick, right? I mean, I know it's the playoffs and guys play with injuries, but you can't mess around with head injuries, and I hope he's smart enough to realize that. In fact, I think that's what Vlasic was dealing with during the Vegas series, because the block shot that Vlasic took, I mean, it looked pretty harmless, so I don't know any other type of injury that would have kept him out of the game other than concussions, because I know Vlasic has pretty strong opinions about concussions and not rushing back, so I hope Pavelski has a similar mindset as far as that goes, because you can feel fine for 2 days, a week, and then 2 weeks later you feel like crap, so they got to be careful with it.
And we'll talk about a little more when we talk about the Colorado preview, kind of just concerns for the Sharks, and injuries is one of them. But let's go back real quick. So I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't cover it.
Yeah.
So the big question is, was a 5-minute major the right call on the ice? I've read a ton of opinions. I've watched the replay numerous times. I had already kind of made up my mind before the game was over. But what do you think, Nolan?
No, it was the wrong call. And I know there's been a lot of Shark fans trying to defend it, which is the natural thing to do. But no, it's the wrong call. But that doesn't mean the refs are to blame for the rest of the game, right? I mean, you give up 4 goals in 4 minutes. I don't really have much sympathy for you. And I mean, you could go back to, if you want to go through the whole series, we can go back to game 2 when Logan's goal was overturned on a clear non-goalie interference that ended up costing the Sharks the second game. So the reason I don't think it was a major is, I'm not even sure it's a 2-minute penalty, honestly, because it's short of a cross check. And I understand the rule says if it leads to a significant injury, it's a major penalty, but I don't feel like the cross check caused that. Yes, the cross check caused him to go off balance and then he falls and hits the ice, but we're not talking that the cross check is what cracked his head open, or that, the guy drove his head into the ice or something like that. I mean, it's just a bad situation where he falls and then hits his head. So one thing led to another, but the penalty didn't cause the injury, in my opinion. Sure, it caused him to fall off balance and then he hits his head, but I don't think you can connect the two directly.
And I've looked at the wording of the rules. So there's kind of 2 rules floating around. One's the NHL rule, and one's actually not the NHL rule. It's the USA Hockey rule. So the NHL rule is that basically the force with which the check was made is the thing that can be assessed to make it a 5-minute or a major. I think I could see it being a 4. I could see you basically saying that there's 2 penalties there, right?
Stasny.
Yeah, I think you could call Stasny. Yes, I think the initial contact was incidental. I think he does give a shove to the ground as Pavs is going down. And I think to some extent you have to say, you've got a guy is falling. You can't just shove him down to the ground in that process.
Well, and here's what I would ask people to think it's a major. If he doesn't land awkwardly and hit his head on the ice, do they even call a penalty? I don't think they do.
No. Or they didn't, right?
Right. Well, that's why Vegas was pissed, because they didn't call anything until they see that, Pavelski looks like he's dead. So.
But with those controversial opinions out of the way, I think we both agree, and I say this all the time. I get on fellow Sharks fans about this. You cannot blame the loss of a game on a penalty. You can't blame certainly the loss of a 7-game series on one penalty. There's no way. You have to always play as if there's going to be bad calls, and you have to power through those. You can't take a penalty and give up 4 goals in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
The Sharks were 4 for 33 on the power play before that 5-minute major.
4 for 27, and then they went 4 for 4, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, it's not like the Knights weren't able to stop the Sharks power play before. Even when on power play, their percentages are pretty low that they're going to score 4 goals like that. I think it's been done twice before in the history of the NHL.
I mean, the playoffs are all about adversity. Bad calls happen every game. Yes, that came at the worst possible time for them, and a major penalty is a lot more significant than a bad, 2-minute minor. But you're up 3-0 with 10 minutes to go. I mean, and even if you blame that one, I mean, they had 2 games before that to close out the series. They were up 3-1 in the series. So you've got Game 5 that they didn't win, Game 6 they didn't win, and then they come back and send it to overtime. They still had a chance in overtime. They didn't win in overtime. So,
I mean, it's the pass interference call argument, right? Like we've seen this in other sports.
The Saints one, it's funny. Some of the Vegas guys compared it to the Saints thing. I think that's completely different because, I mean, that play literally, you could argue, cost the game. I mean, there were several other failures after the call went into it, which the Saints had some too, but still. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, I think the other thing to me is that the injury to Pavs was almost, to me, more of a catalyst than the 5-minute major. I mean, the major helps the Sharks, certainly. Anytime you're up a man, but that's good. But we've seen 5-on-5 where the Sharks score multiple goals in a short period of time if they're motivated properly. I think I think Pavs going down, Jumbo getting on the guys, and the way Logan came out, and after that first goal, he basically just holds up a 1 saying that's 1. He's not even really celebrating as much as saying, like, get your butts in gear. I think the Sharks were way more motivated from the injury itself than necessarily from the 5 minutes.
Not only that, too, but, I mean, the first one they got in literally 6 seconds. I mean, then you look at it and say, oh, shit, we got 4 minutes and 54 seconds left to get 2 goals. That's not that hard to do when you got a man advantage. So getting that first one that quickly was the key to the whole thing. That sort of gives you belief that we can actually do this. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I mean, then you get the second one, then they get like the second one 50 seconds later. So then you're only down 1, then they tie it up, and sure enough, had about a minute and a half left to take the lead and did. So
yeah, I was kind of surprised you didn't see a timeout there. Like,
I think he called one when they either took the lead or no, that's what happened. They thought he called a timeout, but he didn't. There was a delay on the ice. At least the national broadcast I was watching, they thought he had called a timeout, but he didn't.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't call a timeout, or after the second one, right? At some point, when you see that your lead is dwindling, I'm surprised he didn't say, hey, let's stop, let's regroup. Like, give Fleury a minute to get his wits about him and, tell the defense to get their shit in order, as I would say.
But we agree with you, Cody. That's what we pretty much summed up as well. But regardless of what you think of the call, which Chad and I both think it was the wrong call, Vegas had every opportunity to win the series in Game 5 and 6, and then giving up the 4 goals, like you mentioned. So
yeah, I mean, they totally shit the bed in 5, right? 6 was theirs to take. I mean, either team could have won 6, and really, I think Vegas played better in 6. Well, let's go over it. So let's talk a little about the series overall, right? And just our thoughts on the series.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, the biggest story of the series was kind of the teardown of Martin Jones and then the rebuilding of Martin Jones, right? It's like the Berlin Wall got torn down and then they rebuilt it all of a sudden. I mean, Game 1, he didn't really have to do anything. The Sharks, I think, through 2 periods that allowed 10 shots. That was probably the best game I've seen the Sharks play the entire season. They took it to Vegas physically. I mean, they were all over in that game. I don't think Vegas was ready to start the series, but the Sharks took full advantage. And Game 1, I still think, is the best game they played the entire series.
Definitely the most complete game, yeah.
Yeah. And then Game 2, I mean, they come out and give up 3 early goals, and then they had the miraculous comeback to tie it up and took the lead, and then it got overturned, and Vegas scores on the power play which I can understand waving off the goal for goalie interference. I don't think it should have been waved off, but the penalty was the bigger issue there, and that led to the winning goal. But regardless, getting back to Jones, he was pretty awful games 2, 3, and 4. Game 5, I don't think he had to do anything miraculous, but he was definitely very, very good. And Game 6, he obviously stole the franchise record, 58 saves in a playoff game. Game 7, he was okay. I will say what's missed in the Game 7 craziness is when they were down 3-0, he made several point-blank saves to keep it at 3-0. Even when it was 2-0, he held off quite a few before they finally got the third one. There were several breakaways, and which he's been exposed on all season, as we've talked about, and he held it in, and then of course in overtime, shut the door as well. So just the whole series for Jones is just an interesting story in itself.
I think you have the same argument there, right? Game 2, you can't blame their loss on the penalty, or on either the call or the penalty, right? Like calling off the goal or giving them a power play, because they started out the game down 3-0. If the Sharks don't start out 3-0, then that goal that one goal isn't as important of a thing.
And they still have a period and a half after that to get back in the game. So
right. So, but I agree with you. I think Jones, you and I weren't super hot on Jones going into the series. I mean, he was getting better, and we were hoping he'd go playoff mode Jones. And I thought by Game 5, honestly, I thought we wouldn't see him anymore. I thought he was gone. So he looked mentally checked out.
It's almost completely forgotten about right now. I mean, everyone wanted Aaron Dell to start Game 5, myself included, because I thought Jones was mentally checked out, like you said. I figured there's no way he has the confidence to go out there and first shot he's going to give up a goal. And DeBoer stuck with him, and I guess you have to give DeBoer credit. I think it's just kind of blind luck that it worked out. I don't necessarily want to give him a lot of credit for sticking with him, but DeBoer is a big believer in, hey, guys who got me here are the guys I'm going to stick with, so I get it. And it worked out, but I don't know if I would credit DeBoer that much for it. It just happened to work.
Yeah. I mean, in that game, I think, like you said, I don't think Jones was great that game, but he was good enough, and I think that helped build his confidence. And then 6, I mean, he carries them in 6. The 58 saves in the game.
Yep. They had no business winning that game.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
And that's the game to me as the Vegas fans. I know Ronnie was ranting and raving about the Game 7 call. That's the game to me as a Vegas fan you got to look back on. And I mean, I guess they did everything they could to win, but that's the one that hurts as a Vegas fan to me. So,
well, and I would say, like, one of the things I've said to a Vegas fan today, hey, and I said this on our Shark page too. Hey, I'm a Sharks fan. I know what a choke looks like. I've seen playoff chokes. All right, Vegas choked in the playoffs. So
I disagree.
I think they choked. I think they could have shut it down.
Here's why I don't think they choked, because they had a chance to win every one of those games. It's not like they got their ass kicked in 5, 6, and 7. But in Game 6, I think we stole because of Jones. Game 7 is funny because I actually think we outplayed them the first 2 periods. Just Fleury was fantastic, and the Sharks were gripping their stick tight and couldn't finish, gaping nets on rebounds, and they had so many opportunities to score in that game they couldn't finish. So I thought Sharks actually were the better team in Game 7, even though Vegas was ahead 3-0. Just Fleury kind of shut the door.
I'm sure Ronnie thinks it was fake blood. Probably doesn't think the mood landing happened either. But I mean, Fleury's another story to me, because you have a guy who the Pens basically gave up on him and didn't think he was worth keeping around, right?
Well, I mean, they wanted to go with the younger guy, Murray, who had just won them a cup. But right now, it doesn't look too good, but at the time, it made sense.
Yeah. I think for me, watching the Vegas side, taking off my Sharks fan hat for a second, I think Fleury was a big story on the Vegas side, because the Sharks have not been a team that has been easily kept down in score, right?
Right.
Keeping a game 1-1 against the Sharks.
Scoring team in the league,
yeah. Keeping a game 1-1 against the Sharks isn't easy, even if they have less shots than you. Um, but
the one bad goal Fleury did give up is the overtime winner in Game 6. That was a bad goal. And I never saw an interview with. Well, Fleury did do an interview out of the game, but I don't think anyone actually asked him about the goal. Which the Vegas media, some of the questions they ask are comical. But anyway, I don't know if. I don't think that puck was deflected off the defenseman's stick. It may have blocked his vision a little bit, but I mean, you saw his reaction right after that Hurdle overtime goal. He was livid with himself and couldn't believe it went in.
And, uncharacteristically bad, I think. Like, if we'd seen that happen to Jones before the playoffs, we would have said, yeah, that's
great.
It's a high shot. Sure, he misses it, but Fleury's not someone who normally would miss something.
Granted, I guess one bad goal in the whole series isn't much to complain about. It just was a huge goal was the thing, the situation. I mean, because that's the game they needed to finish things off in. But,
so what are the biggest things you think led to the deficit? So we talked about Jones' basically crash before his rebuilding.
Right.
I think that special teams, that stat I quoted earlier on power play, Sharks have to be better on power play.
Yeah,
especially with as many as we got.
Yeah, their power play was not good up until the crazy Game 7, and then Vegas' power play was excellent the first 4 or 5 games of the series, which is kind of funny because in the regular season, Vegas, I think, was 26th on the power play in the NHL. Just goes to show the regular season means jack shit come playoff time, as the Sharks were 6th on the power play in the regular season. But their power play dominated the first few games, especially the Stasny, Pacioretty, and Stone line. I mean, Stone had, 6 goals the first 4 games. Pacioretty had 4 or 5. That whole line ate the Sharks alive the first 4 or 5 games. And as you and I have talked about, the biggest reason we think for that was when Vlasic went down. I think, a period into Game 2. So he basically missed all of Game 2 and then missed Games 3 and 4. So basically they were 0-3 without Vlasic and 4-0 with Vlasic. And I don't think that's a coincidence whatsoever. As soon as Vlasic got back in Game 5, that line went dead quiet as Burns and Vlasic were paired up against them pretty much every shift. So Vlasic was a huge, huge factor in this series.
Well, we talked about him coming back, from what we were both guessing was a concussion earlier in the season, and that after that he really turned around his game, got better and better as his feet got under him, and then he's been instrumental in the playoffs. I mean, he's been huge. So losing him was hard, but Game 2 we were 1 for 8 on power play, I think, and gave up 2 shorthanded goals.
So, I forgot about the shorties. Yeah.
Again, when you go back to saying, "Oh, that call cost us the game," yeah, the 2 shorthanded goals also cost us the game. Not being able to score more than once in 8 power plays probably we were -1 with 8 power plays.
Is it just me, or doesn't that game seem like a month ago?
Seems so long.
It just shows you how crazy the series was. I didn't even remember the shorthanded goals back in Game 2. So I mean, there's so many turning points and ups and downs in the series, but
and 6 and 7 were so stressful to watch. I mean, double overtime in 6, and then that comeback in OT in 7. I think I lost 5 years of my life, having numerous heart attacks during those games.
Yeah, and then the other big call out, I guess, for the Vegas series as far as the Sharks side of things go, or Couture and Hurdle carried the offense pretty much the entire series. Hurdle early on in the series, then Hurdle in Game 6 as well, but Couture really turned it on, especially in Game 7, scoring 2 of the power play goals, and those 2 guys led the way. And you look back at their playoff runs the last few years, those 2 guys are always at the forefront. When they went to the Cup back in 3 years ago now, I believe, Couture was the leading scorer in the NHL in the playoffs, so it's where he gets the nickname Clutcheur, or some of his other nicknames. But Couture's nails in the playoffs, and Hurdle, has been their best player in the playoffs pretty much every year the last 3 years. Even the Stanley Cup final, against Vegas last year, and Anaheim, Edmonton. All those series the last few years, Hurdle's been dominant.
He's been the best player the entire season, in my opinion, and he's even turned it up somehow in the playoffs, which I don't know how he got better. Um,
And Logan kind of talked about that when they were asking him about it after the game the other night. He goes, hey, he's been dominant in the playoffs the last few years, and this year he finally brought it into the regular season. So,
so Cody's got a good question.
yeah, that's a good question.
Because while we're talking about things from this series, right? Do we think Timo will get out of this no goal funk he's currently in? I think there's two guys you asked that question about. One is Timo, and the other is Dongskoy if he comes back in.
Well, there's a lot of guys. I mean,
Well, it's true.
if you think about just this series, I mean, literally it was Couture and Hurl. I mean, Kane did jack shit.
Yeah.
Pavelski, granted, he had major injuries. I don't want to beat him up on, but he was terrible this series. Timo, obviously, who we're going to talk about now, but those three guys basically did nothing.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought I'd see more out of Sorensen than I did. I mean, he's been playing hard, but I thought I'd see a little more production out of him.
Granted, you don't expect him to dominate, but you expect him to be a factor for sure.
Yeah. But as far as Timo's concerned, I don't know. I think part of it is because he's, especially you look at game one, right? Timo's taken almost a different role. I don't know how many hits he had game one, but it was some ridiculous number of hits. I mean, Timo's going out there and he's separating guys from pucks. He's slowing people down in the neutral zone. He's playing the more physical game. So I think he might. Yes, I think he'll score, but I don't know that you'll see him turn up to where he was earlier in the season. I think he's got a slightly different role right now, especially with all the injuries piling up.
Speaking of injuries, that's my question with him, because if we go back to the end of the regular season, the last game against Colorado, or maybe it was the game before, I think it was the last game against Colorado where he slammed his wrist into the boards. And you have to wonder if that's affecting him, because especially game 7, he was dominant. I mean, he had probably 5 or 6 chances to score in overtime and couldn't finish. And if anything would affect your ability to shoot, it would be your wrist.
Yeah.
And he looks great otherwise. So clearly the wrist seems to be having an impact. I don't know if I'm going to blame that for not putting it in the back of the net, because he's had tons of chances, which is always a good sign. He's just not finishing right now. So it's probably a combination of confidence and possibly the wrist.
And I think that's the benefit we have as a team, is that we have enough goal scorers, in my opinion, to where if Timo, if he has to step back from scoring, if he's just not going to, but he can add other things to the team, he can add other things to his line. But I agree with you. I think, to me, Kane's one of my biggest disappointments in the series, because other than chirping and getting in fights,
well, that's really I think the whole Reeves thing just completely fucked up his series. I mean, he was so focused on that the first 4 or 5 games, and then DeBoer and the team made a point, to stay away from that stuff. And I think it sort of flipped the switch off on him. He wasn't really engaged because he was trying to stay out of that stuff. And he almost plays better when he's physical. And I think he was trying to stay away from that because they were trying to stay out of the box because of how many power play goals they were giving up.
But he's got to find a middle ground, right? He's got to be physical without being always in a fight or taking stupid penalties. And I think that's the big thing is, Reeves did his job. When we talk about parts of the game, Reeves is not a goal scorer. He's not a guy who's putting points up. He's there just to get in your head, and the Sharks let him do it. And, I mean, they spent so much time focusing on him in the early games that to me, he won. I mean, he played.
Oh, yeah. He played his role to a T for the first 4 or 5 games until they realized, okay, this is probably not the guy to focus on.
So I guess the good news is there's not a guy on Colorado that I think of in the same way. There's not that shit stir, I guess.
Colorado here in a second, but any last thoughts on the Vegas series?
No, I mean, I definitely there's a lot to build on there, right? So I don't think I'm not going to pretend like strut around and be like, yeah, we beat Vegas, blah blah blah. Like we managed to get through. Yeah. We got some luck on our side at the end. We managed to skate through, or squeeze through there. I think we need to build on that. It's good that they get a couple extra days rest, I think, for everybody, especially with 2 OT games in a row like that. But overall, I think I think it'll probably be the biggest hurdle we have to jump. But I think
it's the best team in the West that they'll have to play. But the challenge, as I guess we'll kind of get into now, is how much is that series going to take out of them? I think is the question. Not only going 7 games, but double overtime in Game 6, overtime in Game 7. Pavelski had his jaw busted up. He's got a concussion now, probably. Couture lost some more teeth, which he seems to do every year now. Donskoy's out for same day-to-day, it sounds like, but we'll see how many games he misses. Haley's out, not that we're too worried about that. Carlson missed practice today, Melker, not Eric. But Eric is obviously banged up as well. He's playing injured, clearly. So that's the biggest question for me going into this Colorado series. I mean, on paper, I think the Sharks are the clear favorite, but how much gas in the tank do they have left? And are these guys have enough energy to get through another series?
I actually think EK looks better.
He did look better as the series went on, but I wonder, the toll it's taken on him over the long term.
I mean, Game 7, he made a couple races back that I don't think he would have made earlier in the series or right before the series started. So I think my hopes with EK is that those 7 games got him in better shape. He's ready to play playoff hockey. But yeah, Donskoy, I'm a big Donskoy fan. People don't necessarily like him because he doesn't score or hasn't been scoring lately. But what I think he adds, much like Timo, even when Timo's not scoring, he adds something to the team besides just putting the puck in the goal. My big thing is just that I hate about the Sharks is I have no idea. I mean, we have no clue where these guys are in terms of getting healthy or what's really wrong with them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't with any NHL team during the playoffs, but yes, the Sharks organization is notoriously close to the vest. I mean, the interview with the board today about Pavelski was a fucking joke. I mean, they asked him for an update. He's day-to-day. Okay, does he have a concussion? Well, he's feeling the effects from the hit. I'll let you put 2 and 2 together. So, yes, he has a concussion, but I'm not going to actually say it. Yeah. Like, just freaking come on, man. It's just stupid. Like, there's no secret. He hit his head on the damn ice. Everyone in the NHL knows it. What are you protecting at this point?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the other concern for me is that they have a big sigh of relief now that they got past the Knights, and they go into this game thinking, okay, this is going to be easier. Like, I mean, I just said it a minute ago, but I don't think they should go in playing that way. I think they should go in playing like they're the underdog because that's where they do their best playing.
The board kind of touched on that a little bit today. Not so much that they'll take them lightly, but it's an emotional letdown to go from fighting for your life to 3 games to a brand new series against a team that everyone expects you to beat. Well, let me put it this way. If this was a matchup in the first round, very few people would have picked Colorado. A lot of people may pick Colorado now because of what they did to Calgary and the battle the Sharks just went through. But on paper, I mean, this is a 2 seed versus an 8 seed.
Yeah.
The Sharks had the second best record in the West, and Colorado had the worst record of the playoff teams. So, but the board has talked about the emotional, drain that the last 3 games have taken on them. And I mean, thank God they got 2 days off. If they were playing tonight, I would not be too hopeful as far as game 1. Not that another day is going to make a huge difference, but I think it's critical that they start tomorrow and not tonight.
Well, we get the big question that happens anytime you see this type of matchup where someone played 7 games and someone played 4 or 5, right? Yep. So what's more important, the rest, or the momentum, right? And I think that
history has kind of proven that momentum is more important in the short term. It's in the long term where, if you play 2, 3, 7-game series, you're going to pay for it,
right,
in the later rounds. But
yeah, I think I kind of disagree with you. I think if they played tonight, I think the Sharks would have actually come out kind of still rolling from the last game. A couple days rest, I'm worried they might come down from that emotional high and reset to a baseline that what we've seen is when they're in that kind of relaxed mode, they're not playing great.
I mean, I can say as a fan, I was mentally drained yesterday. I can't imagine actually being on the ice. So I wasn't ready for another game yesterday, or today. I don't know if they would have been either.
Yeah, I needed another day off for sure. But
Yeah.
so I think it'll be interesting to see. I think if they can stick in their heads that they're an underdog, like if they can just get that mentality, right? Even if it's like, I mean, if I'm DeBoer, I'm like, hey, look, how many times have you guys been here? How many times has the team been here and never won a cup? Nobody thinks you're going to do it. Nobody thinks you're going to make it, right? This team took out Calgary, who is a better ranked team than you. So, like, I would put it in their heads, hey, everything, the odds, even though everybody's picking the Sharks to win, I would put it in their heads that the odds are against them.
I mean, there shouldn't be any motivation issues at this point, which I guess that's a different thing than what you're talking about. But I mean, now instead of for Jumbo, it's for the Jills, right? Pavelski and Jumbo.
Yep.
And obviously, they've never won a cup, but I think the main driving force now are Pavelski and Thornton. But I don't think they'll take this team lightly because of what they just did to Calgary. And if we look at Colorado, so they took care of Calgary in 5 games. They lost the first game, then won. I believe they lost the first game, yes, and then won 4 in a row. And the last 4 games were not particularly close, any of them. Their top line that we had kind of talked about when we did the round 1 preview for the entire league, McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen, they basically did what we said they could possibly do, but we didn't think would happen. They pretty much dominated the entire series. And what I liked about that from the Sharks' perspective is we just dealt with that with the Stone, Pacioretty, and Stastny line. Granted, the McKinnon line's even better than that. But if Vlasic and Burns can even remotely calm those guys down like they did to the Stastny line the last 3 games of the Vegas series, then that's going to be a huge, huge boost.
Yeah, between those 3, I think they had they had half of the goals that were scored in the series between the 3 of them. So yeah, I think you're shut down. I mean, I think Vlasic is going to be assigned to that line essentially. Anytime they're out there and we can get the change, you're going to see Vlasic out there against him.
Yeah.
So I'm not super worried about them. I'm worried about and I would say this goes for all the wild cards that are now moving on to the next round, right? I'm worried about hey, they actually are the underdogs.
Yeah, they're playing with house money, right? No one expects them to. I mean, no one expected them to get to this point, let alone keep going. So, I mean, they're playing free. There's no pressure. They got all the mojo as far as that goes. So.
Yeah, I don't think they start to have real stress until conference finals. Does that make sense? I think this round they're like, hey, this is a free round to us.
Yeah, because they lose their fans. I mean, obviously their fans are going to be upset, but I mean, most in that organization would probably consider the season a success. Whereas the Sharks, if they fall short of, I would say, bare minimum the conference finals, probably really the cup final, then the season's a failure. So the expectation thing definitely weighs on you for sure.
So what do you think? I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many games for the Sharks to win? I think we both agree the Sharks are going to win.
If this was a first round series, I would say Sharks in 5 because of the long series they just went through. I don't think the Sharks will take the first 2 games. I think we'll find a way to win tomorrow and probably have a bit of a letdown in game 2. I think Colorado steals game 2, and I think it goes back to Colorado, and we split there, and then I think we win the next 2. So I think it comes back here, game 5, 2-2, and then we take care of 5 and 6 and put them away in 16.
Yeah, I want to say 5, but I'm going to go with 6 as well. I think my thought was Colorado wins the first one back in Colorado, and then we wake up and finish it off. But the Colorado team, they really are a wild card. I mean, they fit that. Them in Dallas. I mean, honestly, I would say 3 of the 4 wild cards fit that name really well. In that you see flashes of brilliance out of them. You never know which team's going to show up, and
in Colorado, honestly, reminds me a lot of Edmonton. You and I joke about all the time how it's McDavid and a bunch of scrubs. Well, for them, it's McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, and a bunch of scrubs. I mean, you look at that lineup, and they have nobody after that line. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. I mean, there's Soderberg, I think, had 20 goals, but he's not exactly a primetime player. I mean, their depth should get eaten alive by the Sharks if the Sharks play well. And that to me is going to be the key here. Not only shutting down that big line, but the Sharks' depth should eat the rest of their lineup alive. I mean,
but they've got
I'm assuming the Couture. Oh yeah, Nieto, the Long Beach native.
Long Beach native Nieto.
Don't get me started on Nieto. I never understood the fascination Sharks fans have with him. He's a great skater, but God, he never put the puck in the net. But anyway, what I was say is our depth should be the difference. I mean, I'm assuming they'll put the Couture line against the McKinnon line because usually they play against the other team's top line. So if we can just neutralize those guys, stay even, maybe Colorado slightly ahead, I think we're fine. It's going to be up to the Hurdle line and the Thornton line to dominate that series, and they should be able to. If those guys play at the top of their game, unless Grubauer in net for Colorado plays out of his mind and stands on his head, then I think the Sharks should have a clear advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I think you see I don't know if you see Couture line right away. I don't know if with Pavs out, if that's the matchup they go with. But
in practice they had, I think, Couture, Meyer, and Nyquist. And Nyquist had moved up to that line.
That's not a bad combo, actually. I like that. So then, are you going to put Radillo on the Hurdle line?
Well, I'm assuming Radillo's going to draw him because you and I are both assuming. Well, we know Pavelski's out for tomorrow, and it looks like Donskoy's out for tomorrow as well. So they have a hole in the top 9. So Radillo's really the only guy that can fill that spot. They could move Melker up in the top 9. DeBoer seems like to do that, but I think Melker's much better on the fourth line. So if they stick with Couture, Meyer, and Nyquist, then it'll probably be Hurdle, Kane, and Radillo. They seem to want to keep that Thornton line the same. Thornton, LeBanc, and Sorensen. They never seem to change that line, so I don't think they will.
I wouldn't. It's the least broken line to me. So
and the Hurdle's been great, but his line mates have not been great in the playoffs. So I mean, sure, throw Radillo on there and see what happens. Maybe it helps that line out.
I mean, they can speak Czech to each other, so that'll probably improve their communication. And Cody asked, do we think Haley will see any playing time in the series? I think you will right now. You might just because of the number of injuries.
If he's healthy, I mean, DeBoer said today that he's questionable for tomorrow. If he's healthy, I think he plays tomorrow because I don't think Donskoy is in tomorrow. So there's an open spot on the third line and the fourth line right now, assuming Pavelski and Donskoy are out. So Chad and I were thinking Radillo's in the top 9, and then the fourth line spot, if Donkey is out, then it's got to be either Haley or Gambrell, which I don't think they're going to throw Gambrell into his first NHL playoff game at this point.
Yeah, I think Haley or Donskoy, whoever is healthy first.
Yeah, and if they're both out, then Gambrell could come in. They also called up a bunch of guys from the Barracuda today, Suomela, Alex True. I assume they may use Suomela since he has some NHL experience earlier this year, which is funny. I completely forgot about him until I saw that come across the news today.
Yeah, but the reason why you forgot about it is because of how good his NHL experience was the beginning of the year.
What's funny is he was better in the NHL than he's been in the AHL. But yeah, I would think that they would put in Gambrell ahead of Suomela. So,
but I would say just to also talk to Cody's question, if the choice is between Haley and Donskoy, if they're both healthy, I think Donskoy is the one that plays at this point.
And I think that's because of how the Vegas series went, right? I mean, Donskoy was very, very good. The only reason he came out is because he got hurt. So.
Yeah. We had the noticeable thing of DeBoer actually benched LeBlanc at one point because of how he was playing.
And then he turned out to be the Game 7 hero.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I think Donskoy's out of the doghouse a little bit. His play's good even if he's not scoring, and you can't really blame him when most of your team isn't scoring. So I think between those two, Donskoy plays over Haley, and it's also a different team. Colorado's a different team than Vegas is, and you don't need Haley's minimal talents as much as you need Donskoy's. So.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas was sort of suited for Haley because of the Reeves line. I mean, Reeves and Carey are two big boys that play a similar role to Haley. Reeves plays it a lot better because he can actually play hockey. But, I mean, that was a series built for Haley as far as matchup goes. Colorado is Vegas is a fast team too, but Colorado is a young and speedy team as well. And it's kind of funny though, because I mean, Donskoy was healthy at the beginning of the Vegas series, and they did choose Haley over Donskoy, as Donskoy sort of fell out of favor the last few weeks of the season because he's gone 30 games without scoring a goal. It's just, I find it funny that Haley gets hurt. That's what allows Donskoy to come in, and now Donskoy's out, and that's what will probably allow Haley to come back in. So that's the how the playoffs go. I mean, like DeBoer said today, I mean, you're going to go through your entire depth in the playoffs. Guys are going to go out from injury, so just part of the deal.
So let's talk a little bit about, since we have some time, the playoffs as a whole. I commented on the Sports Talk page earlier, but I think if you want, and I've seen this a few other people, I didn't steal it, but they said the same thing. But if you want to see an example of parity in a sports league, I think the NHL playoffs is an example of that, right? You talk about any other sport, and you kind of have an idea of the teams that are going to make it to the end of the playoffs. And if you asked that at the beginning of the NHL series, you would have definitely had Tampa Bay in that list, right? You would have. I don't know.
Hell, just look at our brackets. I think in my bracket, I got 2 out of 8 matchups right. I picked the Sharks, and then I picked Boston, and I didn't even want to pick the Sharks. I just did because I wasn't going to pick against my own team. But so those are the only 2 I got right, and those were really the only 2 that weren't upsets.
Yeah.
Granted, we had talked about a lot of them could have been upsets, but you just don't expect it to happen in almost every single one.
No, I didn't even pick Carolina. I mean, I talked about them being the one I would bet on.
Right.
But I didn't pick them in my bracket. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And then you have 4 wildcard teams making it to the second round, and not a single first seed is getting in. And 2 sweeps.
Yeah, the biggest story is Tampa Bay, right? I mean, they had a historic season, probably the most dominant season an NHL team has had in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And then they're up. I remember texting you the very first game of that series, it was the first game of the NHL playoffs, if I recall. And they were ahead, 3-0 in the first period? And then they lose that game. And then they get swept.
I turned it off. I was watching the game.
Unbelievable. I turned it off too and looked at the score on my phone. I was like, what in the world just happened?
Yep. I wanted to watch that series because I was like, oh, Tampa's the team to watch, right? And I was like, okay, I've seen enough. Like, Tampa's going to cruise through this. And then you're like, hey, Tampa just lost. Wait, what? How's that happen? And Carolina was the team I believed in the most out of the wild cards. And it took them 7 games to get there.
That was a wild series. I mean, the home team had won every single game until Game 7. In fact, Carolina had not led a single second in Washington that entire series, even in Game 7 until the overtime goal. That's the 1 second or 0 seconds they've led in Washington, D.C. the entire series. Then they win the series in D.C. So
yeah,
it's just crazy.
To me, that Carolina and Dallas were the 2 least surprising of those 4. I didn't expect Colorado at all to beat Calgary, and I would never have bet on Columbus.
Yeah, if I had to go order surprises, definitely Columbus over Tampa would be a surprise, I think, to everybody. I would agree with you. Colorado over Calgary was a second, and then I'd probably say, I mean, the Islanders over Pittsburgh. I mean, I picked Pittsburgh just because of the experience, but I guess it's not that big of a surprise.
It's not technically an upset, right?
No, seeding-wise, it's not, yeah. And then Cody mentioned having the West correct. So the other upsets in the West were St. Louis over Winnipeg, and then Nashville going down at the hands of Dallas. And both of those series, if you look at the expert picks, they were pretty even, or at least a lot of people anticipated that happening. Cody did. Yeah. We didn't. Cody's smarter than us and should be on the podcast apparently. But
we'll have him on as a guest.
Right. But neither of those were huge surprises. I think the bigger surprise there is that both Nashville and Winnipeg went out, and then Calgary goes out. So literally, if you ignore the Sharks series, the 3 best teams in the West outside of the Sharks series got knocked out on paper.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about Dallas being, a sleeper, like Dallas being a team that is better than they look on paper. I had St. Louis and Winnipeg as a match. Like I think that series could have gone either way, and I think the play showed that. But yeah, I didn't. Tampa took me completely by surprise, and I think what screwed them is when they're down 2 games. I forget which player it was, but skated over to the bench and told Columbus, "Remember when you were up 2 games last year and what happened?" Because they ended up losing. And then they got swept. Maybe you shouldn't open your mouth. Win a game before you start talking trash, right?
Yeah, that was a bad look. I mean, I think that's exactly what I told you when we talked about that is win a fucking game before you open your mouth. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, if you go from 3-0 to 3-1, okay, whatever. Start, chirping, which we didn't talk about that as far as chirping the whole DeBoer and Gallant controversy about Gallant chirping Couture. What were your thoughts on that situation?
I think Gallant, it's funny because people made a big deal out of who's the player that commented on the penalty afterwards? Marchessault. And actually, reading Marchessault's comments, I don't think it was that bad. Like, he was mad about the call. I understand that. But, he was like, you got to give it to San Jose. I mean,
the only issue I have with his comments and really all their comments that I've read, maybe I've missed some, is I haven't seen a single one say, you know what, it's on us to not give up 4 goals, or it's on us, we were up 3-1. I didn't hear any of them say that, and it's hard to say that in the moment when that just happens, but if he had added that onto the end of it, then I wouldn't have had an issue with it.
Yeah, but the coach, I expect chirping between players, right? Like,
yeah,
our players do it all the time. I mean, Jumbo loves to skate over and chirp at the other team. But I feel like the coach stepping in there is so uncalled for. I mean,
and he's saying he didn't, but I don't buy it. The board doesn't seem like someone who makes stuff up to me.
No, I don't think so. I think based on his other behavior during the series, I don't find it out of character.
Well, the ones that he admitted to, right, were I want to talk about that. The high stick to Logan where he loses 2 teeth and the motherfuckers are claiming he flopped. He's got teeth on the ice. Yeah. How is he flopping? Like, you get 2 teeth knocked out and tell me how it feels. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, he was just carrying those teeth in his gloves so that when when it looked like a high stick, he could drop teeth on the ice.
I guess the argument is, he threw his head back and flew, but regardless of whether he's acting or not, he lost 2 teeth. You're going to get a damn penalty regardless.
When you only got a 2. I don't know what they were bitching about. Like, you only got a 2 because I guess they didn't see blood. They just saw teeth.
Yeah. So the handshake line thing, and he actually did shake hands. That was misinformation that came out initially because some of the cameras didn't show up. But right when they got off the bench, him and DeBoer shook hands real quick. I don't know if he went although you're saying the handshake line, I don't know if he went through the whole line. I do know he shook hands with DeBoer, though.
I did read that he skipped the line, that he shook DeBoer's hand and then walked off the ice.
That's right, what you were saying.
Again, like, to me, that's one of my favorite things about NHL is the handshake line. I like that after even an ugly series like we had, right? The players line up, they shake hands, the coaches come out and do it. They show some respect to each other. Honestly, like the Fleury, seeing Fleury and Jones talk to each other, that's always interesting because they know how the other one feels.
Goalies, I'm sure, have mad respect for each other. And then Carlson and Stone shared a moment, they're Ottawa. Probably telling each other, thank God we got out of there, right? I was
going to say that we're not on Ottawa anymore. Handshake.
Yeah, let's throw a party in the off season to celebrate this. Who knows? Maybe Stone's trying to recruit him to Vegas. Hopefully not. But the one that I didn't see that I wanted to see was Reeves and Kane shaking hands or throwing fists at each other. But I'm assuming they were cordial. But I wanted to see that. I didn't see any video of it.
Yeah, I mean Reeves. It's hard to say, right? Like, it's hard to tell if he's playing a character, right? If he knows that's his role.
I think that's part of it, yeah. Big part of it, probably.
Off the ice, at least out of the series, he's not like that. Obviously, off the ice, he's still like that because he tweets stuff. Yeah. He calls Jumbo blind. But
we didn't talk about that either.
Let's get into it. I thought it was.
Like, why not?
I actually thought it was funny. Like I had to laugh when I read it.
I didn't have a problem with it either. I mean, I get it. Joe's a legend and be respectful, but Joe kind of started it. I mean, Joe opened his mouth first in terms of saying, "Well, man, a 30-goal scorer Kane took him down," and blah blah blah. Which I love Joe. I don't have a problem with the comment, but if you're gonna take it, you're gonna dish it. I don't think Joe gives a shit that Reeves came back at him, but it was more Kane and stuff that talked about the disrespect. But
I also think it's funny that people think Kane won that fight, but
yeah, I mean, there wasn't much of a. I mean, and first of all, he shouldn't win that fight. Reeves is
correct,
double his size. I mean, not that Kane's a small guy, but Reeves is pretty damn big. So,
well, that's another good point. Kane seems to have a tendency to take on guys he shouldn't be fighting.
Like I mean,
Chara.
Is that a good thing that he's got courage, or is it a bad thing? But I guess a little bit of both. But,
so let's talk about because I know we hit an hour, so let's. What do you think?
5 hours a night.
Yeah, 5 hours a night. We could talk about this all night long.
We'll be here until game 1 tomorrow.
So let's do picks now that our brackets are completely destroyed.
Before that, I have one question.
Sure.
About the rest of the NHL, and I guess this kind of previews the rest of your bracket. But if you had to pick one of these wild card teams that advance to go all the way, who would be your team?
Carolina.
So it's Carolina, Columbus,
Colorado,
Dallas, and Colorado. Yeah. So you say Carolina. I would say Columbus. They were down 1-0 tonight. I haven't seen the final score against Boston, but that would be my pick. Just because of what they did to Tampa Bay. Obviously, they got something going on. They're in overtime right now. It's 2-2 in the first overtime. You look at so Columbus was ahead 2-1 with about 4.5 minutes left in the game, and Boston tied it up to send it to overtime, it looks like. But that would be my pick because Bobrovsky's playing really, really well. He's actually historically been pretty bad in the playoffs, but he's played really well. John Tortorella always tends to get the most out of his teams, at least the first couple of years he's with the teams, and then his act gets old and they get tired of him and don't listen to him anymore. In fact, I will do a shout out to John Scott, former enforcer for the Sharks, who has his own podcast, which I would highly encourage listening to.
Yeah.
He has Barclay Goodrow on his show tomorrow. But last week on his podcast, he talked about playing under Tortorella and some of the crazy stories, and he fucking hated him. But anyway, Tortorella runs thin on guys, but right now I think Columbus is still buying into his shenanigans. And obviously whatever they're doing is working. So that would be my pick.
I think the problem there is that I agree with you that goaltending is just on point right now with them. But I think
Islanders too have great goaltending, as Cody pointed out earlier.
Yeah. But I think the problem is that I think that's all Columbus, not all they have going for them, but I think that they're hinging on that, right? Like they need that goaltending to be where it's at in order to make it through. Yeah. And I don't know that it stays consistent. I think Carolina has a weird team dynamic where, like, I mean, I can't name 3 stars really off of the Hurricane team, and really who is their big hero?
Young guys, Sebastian Aho. I mean, Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, which I mean, he's at the end of his career, but he's more. I mean, he's their captain, their emotional leader. So well,
and McGinn, right, was like a big part of the win.
McGinn's brother.
When you're naming him again, when you're naming him again as a good player, you know you're.
I mean, I don't think he's one of their main guys, but he was the hero, just like Goodrow was for us. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right, we'll get to the picks since I already kind of.
All right, I'll go first. So I'm going to pick the Sharks over Colorado in a shocking pick.
So we both had Sharks and 6 on that one.
Yeah. I'm going to go with St. Louis over Dallas. I'm going to, not just because I kind of hope to see one. I know a couple Blues fans, and I would love to see a series between us. But also, I just think St. Louis is a better team than Dallas is. They're a more consistent team than Dallas is. I think St. Louis wins theirs. I'm going to say
Let's
5 or
do our picks. We'll go
Oh.
series by series here.
go ahead.
The live update, since this is a live podcast, Boston just won in overtime over Columbus 3-2, and St. Louis is ahead 1-0 in the first period against Dallas. So St. Louis and Dallas was the series we're talking about. I agree. I got St. Louis. St. Louis was probably the hottest team in the West going into the playoffs. Carried that into the Winnipeg series, so I think they keep the hot streak going. And in Dallas, it's funny, we've talked about the depth issues that McDavid and Edmonton has and the depth issues Colorado has. Dallas has the same problem after their top few guys. And they did add Zuccarello with the deadline, which was a nice pickup, but their depth is not nearly the same as St. Louis, and I think that's probably going to be the difference in the series. Both teams have very good goaltending. Ben Bishop's had one of his better years in a long time for Dallas. And then St. Louis had the kid that came out of nowhere, Jordan Bennington, who's ironically, Paul Gackle, Sharks beat reporter, uncovered some old racist tweets from the young kid, which never took off like it has in other sports. But anyway, they both have good goaltending, but I got St. Louis. And I think that could go 7, but I'll say 6 games, St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm going to say 6 on that as well. So then Carolina and the Islanders.
Yeah.
I've got Carolina. I think it's going to go another 6 or 7 though. I think they're gonna have to struggle all the way through if they're gonna make it. So I'm gonna say Carolina. I'm gonna say 6. They managed to do it in 6 this time.
Finally, we disagree. I think the first round we picked the same every matchup, right?
Yeah,
I got the Islanders. Just because I was very impressed with how easily they took care of Pittsburgh. Cody mentioned it earlier. Leonard and net is playing fantastic this time of the year. Typically, the team with the best goaltending wins. The Shark series may have been an exception to that, but I'll ride the Islanders and their goaltending. And how awesome is it that the Islanders are in the second round and John Tavares is not? That story is just nobody expected the Islanders to get to the playoffs, and here they are with a hell of a chance to get to the conference final. And I do think they get to the conference finals and all. I want to say 5 games. I think they take care of Carolina pretty easy. I was not impressed with Carolina in the Washington series. Granted, I didn't watch much of that series, but I'm never that impressed by series where the home team wins every game and then they manage to pull out Game 7 somehow.
I would say until the Sharks Game 7,
yeah,
the most heart I saw in the playoffs was Carolina, and that's kind of where I think they have enough heart to push them at least to the conference finals.
They definitely. They are, I guess, the biggest underdog in a lot of ways. Although they're playing the other biggest underdog in the Islanders, which makes it an interesting matchup because you got 2 really cool stories. Hurricanes haven't made the playoffs in how many years? 10, 15, and then
yeah,
the Islanders, the whole Tavares situation. Everybody expected them to be the worst team in the NHL. So it's an interesting series. Both teams are, playing way above what anyone. Well, Carolina actually was expected to be pretty good. It's just they haven't been to the playoffs in a while. So.
And they're a bunch of jerks.
Right. Don Cherry's rolling over in his soon-to-be grave.
Soon to be great.
Not confident. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I think he's entertaining, but he has some wild opinions. I'm a big fan of Evander Kane, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
And then, so the last matchup is Boston and Columbus. I don't think Columbus beats Boston. I don't think they're a team that's set up for that.
Yeah, this one I keep going back and forth on. In any other NHL playoff year, I would pick Boston, but the way things are going this year, I'm going to go Columbus just because upsets have ruled the day, and why not have another one?
All right.
They did lose, and I'm picking them even though they lost just Game 1 just now. But I'll take confidence out of the fact that they took Boston to overtime in Game 1. And Boston is by far the favorite in the East now, so they've got a little additional pressure if they buy into that. And I think Columbus rides the high from the Tampa Bay series at least one more round. So I guess we'll do the rest of our picks that are going to go to shit after this round anyway.
Yeah, we agree on the West and we disagree in the East. I'm going to call it right now. I'll go ahead and call the final.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's Sharks and Carolina.
What I want to see, well, I don't want to see it as a fan because Boston, I think, would be our toughest matchup. That's what I would want to see just for the Joe Thornton situation. But I'm going to go with San Jose and Columbus. I think, I'm either San Jose, Columbus, or San Jose, New York. I keep going back and forth. I'm going to say Columbus. I think San Jose and Columbus.
You don't have to lock it in place until the conference finals. You don't have to.
Well, we already tried in the first round. Look how that went. So
yeah, you're picking San Jose and
we both had Tampa Bay and Nashville. How'd that turn out? They're both gone. So clearly, don't.
We did have Tampa Bay and Nashville. Yeah.
If you're a betting person, go ahead and bet the opposite of what we just said.
My bracket is gray right now.
Yeah. Did you see NHL.com is doing a second chance bracket because everyone got destroyed? So I wonder how many perfect brackets are left. I can't imagine there's many.
I wonder how much money was won betting on wild cards. Because I mean, some of the guys I know that bet, they would only go in and bet. They'd go bet on all 4 wild cards, right? And if you did that, I mean, you made out like a bandit.
But I guess the last thought, unless you have other stuff you want to go into, is the Sharks are never going to get an opportunity like this again. I mean, the deck is clear other than Boston on the East, which you don't really worry about the other conferences. I mean, once you get there, then you worry about it. You're just trying to get there, right? So, I mean, not that they're going to have an easy time with any of these teams, but compared to years past, I mean, you can't ask for a better situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Vegas was the toughest team in the West that they were going to have to face. And like I said, I don't want them to think that, but at the same time, I don't want them to play like that's the case, but I do think this is the clearest path to the finals that they're going to have. So, we've seen them go once before. I just got to see them hoist the cup.
The biggest question is how much did they lose in this series of Vegas? I mean, how much did it take out of them? That's, to me, is the only question moving forward. Well, that and Jones. Those are the 2 big questions for me. Is Jones going to be the guy from games 5 and 6, or is he going to be the guy from games 2 and 3 and 4?
I'm praying for 5 and 6.
You would hope it's behind him now, right? And he's got confidence back. And I don't know if he's going to be the guy from game 5 and 6, but I think he'll probably fall somewhere in the middle between, the bad Jones and the good Jones, which they're good enough to get by with that. But if he plays well, then watch out. Then they're really in business.
Yeah, I guess my last thought is just I'm really impressed with, and I think this is one of the things that's helping drive them is with the way Jumbo is a father figure on this team. It hasn't shown any more than it has now, right? Like, I mean, the last game, especially the way he was with Pavs, the way he was with the team afterwards. I mean, the guy was emotional just talking about it.
Look at the 2 guys that he's played the most with this year, right? Sorensen and LeBanc. Sorensen has had so many good moments this year. It's obviously his best year in the NHL. LeBanc is always in and out of DeBoer's doghouse, but just look at Game 7. Even ignoring the power play 4 goals, LeBanc was their best player that game, the first 2 periods. I mean, he was, if you watched the national broadcast, I'm sure you were watching the Sharks broadcast since you're still in California. Unfortunately, I can't watch Randy and Bakes anymore. So I'm forced to listen to the national guys, but they were pumping up LeBanc the whole game. And I mean, then he just took over on the power play. And I looked at the time on ice numbers for Game 7, and he had the most minutes of any Sharks forward other than either Hurdle or Couture had more, but he was second on the team in minutes for forwards. And you would have never seen that earlier in this season.
No,
I mean, he was playing 7 or 8 minutes.
I was talking about trading him earlier this season.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how, and I wasn't the only one. Like, people were talking about, yeah. So
the Nyquist thing has not worked out so far. He needs to show up this next round, especially if Donskoy is out. So, and Pavelski.
So, hopefully we'll be back in 4 games to talk about how great the second round was. But I think either way, at the end of the second round, we'll definitely do a show. Maybe if something miraculous happens, we'll do one before that. But
yeah, if we have another game like Game 7, then we'll do another midweeker. But my heart can't take another Game 7 like that, so let's hope that doesn't happen. I guess if we win, I'll deal with it. But yeah, I prefer not to have to go through that again.
all right. Well, thanks for everybody who joined us live. Anybody listening to the podcast, give us a follow and a review. As many stars as you can possibly click is the best. And check us out. We try to tweet during the games. We've been really bad about it lately, but I'm going to try to get on it again. I've just been so stressed watching them that I can't bring myself to tweet. At Sharks Talk 916. And you can check us out online on sportstalk916.com or on Facebook on the Sports Talk 916 network. Thanks, everybody.